bullshit, but it's convincing enough to conservatives who have the core understanding that, politicians are bought and sold. At least Trump's not bought. He's funding his own campaign, blah, blah, blah. It's obviously not true, but these core values that most Americans share is something that we need to tap into. That's what you're doing.
100%. I think you hit it right on the money, where that Trump and Bernie both resonate well with people. It's like, look, we're here for you. We're here for the masses. Um, we're not we're not taking corporate PAC money, and they both had that same commonality. They both talked about you know government is trying to stick it to you, and I'm here to protect you. Um, and you're right. I mean that is the very common principle that most Americans like: a fighter, a champion, someone that's not in the system.
Yeah.
One of the things that Americans tend to love is the fact that they don't like people that's been in the system for a very long time. Because reality is, like anything, you do something long enough, you eventually will get dirt on your hands. And I think that America likes the idea of their presidents or their leaders being fresh with fresh ideas,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
not tainted by the system.
Especially because they haven't seen anything happen in their lives from the government to actually help them. So they can't imagine the old ideas we've been passing back and forth. They've clearly been exhausted. We've
Hmm.
tried. It hasn't worked. Nothing's passing through Congress. We need something new, something to shake everything up because nothing's fundamentally changed in my lifetime,
Yeah.
etc.
No, I
So,
agree with you.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, you're right. Nothing's fundamentally changed in their lifetime, and that is kind of the problem. I mean, that's been, I don't know, government's been around since well, way before 1776, but
Yeah, and that
you know,
wasn't our government. We were
yeah,
part of the British government, stuff like that. But I
yeah,
mean, even then, they understood representation when they were being exploited by the British monarchy. When money that they produced was going overseas to some rich asshole who, what did they get in return? It's not like the it's not like England was protecting them. They were so far away, like they had to protect themselves. There wasn't really anything they were getting back from that. Which is
yeah,
brings me to my next point. Is like America has such an anti-tax uh, base
yeah,
because we don't. It's so much of it was wasted compared to other countries. We're not getting anything in return. When we see countries like the Nordic countries, there's a lot less. Maybe the ultra wealthy will push back against high taxes because they have to pay the brunt of it. But
yeah,
they have a society where they value sharing and they value, you know, helping the other guy with the money that they pay out. It's not
yeah,
as much, it's not so dogmatic. When they get something in return, when they see things from their government, they have health care, they have child care. If they get sick, they can have sick leave guaranteed by the government. If they lose their health insurance isn't tied to their jobs. They're not losing a job and their health care.
hmm,
There's just so many things that we do completely backwards that makes us distrust the way that our lives are run because of the way the government is. And
yeah,
it's just a bought system. And even when we talk about these programs, we still have to consider the fact that even if we pass them, we have a Republican Party that will do anything in their power to defund these programs and to completely what's the word? Not deregulate. Uh,
decentralized.
no. This is the one where they uh, privatize to
Okay,
privatize public goods,
yeah,
like even roads. Roads you have to pay for every road that you drive on. You
yeah,
got to pass through in this libertarian right wing utopia. Every single road, every quarter of a mile you pass through a toll station to pay for it. Like some things just do not make sense in the private sphere under the
yeah,
capitalist profit market motive. Like it just does not make sense. Healthcare is another one where it just does not make sense, and it's not. to be pro-government or to want to, oh, I just trust the government to administrate everything. It's no, you don't trust the private market to take things on its back, and we haven't really come up with a better solution. So we just have to take what works best around the world. You know,
Yeah.
we can come up with this great idea that doesn't exist yet,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't just randomly drop this system that we have to try something completely unfounded and something that has no data or studies. We can't do that system. Everything has to happen progressively, incrementally, and we have to work based on data. And right now, the data shows the Nordic model, when you have a higher tax system that redistributes wealth to the people who need it best. You know, the people who are in situations like mothers are not, they don't have high market value. They're not producing anything for the system, except they're producing the future children, the future workers of society, and they have to stay home sometimes. And we can't just let mothers starve. What about single mothers? That can't even be home for their children, and
Mm-hmm.
they have all these bills. They have a one income household, and they can't even be there. What are we going to do? What kind of community service are we going to do for these children? Like, there's so many just black holes in a laissez-faire system that we, as a community, as a democracy, have solutions for. If you look around the world, places that do it better, like they are just different demographic systems. Sure, it's a 4 million people country. It's not going to translate the exact same way, but we have economists. We have thousands of economists. We have so many people who know how to orchestrate these systems to work within our system. But we are so scared of anything fundamentally changing because there's risk of things not changing for the worse, which I think it's way less riskier to change things for the better than to keep it as it is, because right now it's not working for pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree, man. You're just try. I think that's what you're
yeah,
saying. It's like, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, no one's ever faulted in history for making an attempt at something. And I feel like we've been very stagnant the last. When did Obamacare pass? In 2008,
2012, 2009.
2009.
Yeah,
That was
like 12
um,
years, 13 years ago, 14
13
years
years,
ago.
13, 14 years ago was the last major legislation that passed in
Other than
America.
the infrastructure bill, but
The infrastructure, yes, the infrastructure bills passed. It's hard. You're not going to see impact of that for like another 10, 20, 30 years.
yeah, exactly.
So the most impactful legislation that's passed is,
Most
uh,
transformative change.
yeah, more
Uh,
sense.
of legislation. I was about to bring up gay marriage, but that's not legislation. Never mind.
Yeah, it was done in the judiciary. But
Yeah.
yeah, the legislation, yeah, it definitely was done, was Obamacare. And before that, what was the last major thing? The
War.
19 Iraq War in 2001. So, and then before that, I think we go
More
probably,
war.
yeah, the war again.
The other war. More war. I mean, Bill Clinton passed some small programs like chips, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, increasing marginally access to abortion care. Like, Bill Clinton did like 10 things, did a couple things that helped us, but
Yeah, but major things, I think maybe five or six.
yeah,
We,
nothing
okay.
fundamentally. We've had a Republican Party that does nothing but dismantle systems and make them weaker and give people less access to public needs because they want to provide, they want to fill the vacuum with capitalists and people to start up companies. But then we have a Democratic side who just has to spend all their administration pulling back all the deregulation and all the bad policies of Republicans, just trying to get to a neutral state before they can even pass anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've seen with the Biden administration. Pretty much all they've been doing is just rolling back Trump era policies. And many they have not been rolling back, which is absurd. Like the immigration policies of Biden are, he hasn't done fundamentally anything. No, he hasn't done much with healthcare since the Trump administration. Like they haven't even touched it. So we're not seeing a lot of things benefiting us, even from democratic administrations. And
Yeah.
to be fair, the presidency is not the main avenue for change in our society.
Mm-hmm.
The president is just sort of the face of the party, and they sort of, when the president is doing well, the party gets voted in. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
fundamentally about the legislation, the legislators, the state, local governments that have to pass legislation. But none of that is even remotely. We're not getting near change because of things like the filibuster, things that are built in anti-democratic parts of our infrastructures, like
Yeah.
like I said, like the filibuster. We can't pass legislation with 51 votes, a majority, in the
Yeah.
Senate, which we've had multitudes of times. We would have passed so many forms of legislation if we were allowed to pass things with 51 votes. But
Yeah.
no, we need 40% of the population has more power than 60 for some reason. We think that's a good idea. They're like, oh, well, we don't want the majority to run away with to the majority to terrorize the minority. If you get 51%, they shouldn't get to dictate everything for the 49. We have 40% dictating for the 60% right now. We
Yep.
haven't passed anything majorly like big programs since LBJ when he had above 60 votes in the Senate.
Yeah. That's
So
so true.
we can see how nothing changes, and it's built to stagnate in our system.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the founding fathers is their intent was for our government to be slow. I'm not going to sit there and say that that wasn't their intent. They definitely wanted the government to be slow and not make
Mm-hmm.
fast changes. Um,
But government at that time, we didn't have remotely the same kinds of government. We didn't have democratic governments. We had monarchies. So it makes a lot of sense why you would want to create restrictions on monarchies from dictating how
mhm.
your lives are lived. That's the point. That was liberalism. It
Yeah.
was its foundation.
Well,
Was
explain that a little bit more. What do you mean by monarchies?
I mean, we were literally like had a revolution against the British monarchy.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was a it wasn't it was a pre-shareholder capitalist economic system, a mercantile state capitalist system where we still had like the profit motive and private ownership, but it was all dictated from a central authority figure.
Yeah. The
Which,
king.
if preceding capitalism, preceding mercantilism, we had feudalism, which was
Mhm.
you have lands and lords who own all the land. Like I said, lands
Uh,
and lords and whatever, ladies. I
yeah.
don't know.
Lords and ladies
Land.
who
I was
own
thinking
land.
like landlord in my head. Whatever.
Yeah. But no, we haven't changed.
Landlords. And
But we haven't changed that system. It still exists. The person with the most land, most assets,
yeah,
usually dictate policy and dictate who's going to be the next elected person.
and you
We
have
just change.
the proletariat, the uh like the peasants of the system, basically the
Yeah.
same idea, just leeching off of the next rich person who exploits them, lets them live on land that they only own because they own the military. Essentially, nobody owns land. You can only occupy and protect land with the threat of violence. Like
Yeah.
all land ownership comes from imperialism at the end of the day, and who is the bigger army. So
Yeah.
they're creating a restriction on who can own land so that if people want to live and not be forever aimless, I can't think of the term of those people, just sort of wander, whatever. People who just sort of
Oh, you're talking about geez, what are their
see,
names?
right?
They well, they're common. There were
No, nomads.
nomads. There it
Yeah,
is. I was thinking
there you go.
gypsies,
Yeah, I
gypsies
know
and
you don't want to say that.
nomads. Yeah, that's getting at.
We don't want to be nomads. We want to have a land and we want to live there and raise a family. So that you're the only option you have. You don't have an option to like start a co-op in the year 1500. No, you have to work for the landowners, which are just rich noblemen, and they have a consolidation of all the wealth, and you get to keep a minute, just a tiny, just enough to like not die, just enough that you're productive enough to work in the fields and give them what they need out of the fields.
Yeah.
We have not, like you said, the system is built to change slowly, and that's kind of how all of society is reformed. So we have slowly reformed a system away from property ownership dictating everything for society. But at the end of the day, shares of companies are owned by like 5% of the population, and that
Yeah.
is where all the profits of every company is centralized in the shares. And some of that money they spend on administration and on buying new supplies and stuff like that. But everything off the top goes straight into the pockets of the people who invested money, people that don't enter the companies that they own. And they don't own the companies generally for more than until they decide to sell their stocks or whatever. So it's not like they have any sort of vested interest in the success of the companies that they own. And the bosses that run the companies are hired by shareholder boards, and their job is to ensure that profits go directly to shareholders, not that their workers are taken care of, not that their lives are good while they're at their job. It's just purely efficiency, or you will get fired, or you won't get your next bonus. So bosses are pitted against the workers in this situation, and they're incentivized to do so.
Yeah.
Conservatives always talk about incentives, but they don't talk about the incentives of people in power to not change, to
Yeah.
harm your lives. We have the Marxist theory is that it's about dialectical materialism, about how everybody's looking out for their own material conditions, and the system of capitalism is one where the people who own property, the people who own everything in society, are pitted against the working class. They need somebody to work for them for basically nothing, because if they pay the workers, they have a lot less profits, and then they can't reinvest that money, and they can't make more profits. It makes a lot of sense for them to try to cut corners when it comes to workers, because
Yeah.
what's a worker? They're just going to quit and get a better job eventually. If we have a system where everybody's constantly quitting their jobs because their jobs suck, and they find a new job, and that job after 6 months also sucks, we have a system of exploitation where we always think there's going to be something better, but at the end of the day, you're still working 65% or something of Americans work paycheck to paycheck. People
Yeah.
are making just the bare minimum they need to survive, and that doesn't include how much they owe in debts. Like, we don't have a system built to work for a majority of people. We have a system manipulated and controlled by the people who own property and want to keep their property and not lose any sort of amount of. They don't want to see their bank accounts go down, even a small amount, even if it helps society, because
You just
they don't need the things that society's asking for. They don't
are you
need
talking
help.
about not just like land property, but also intellectual property too.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Property. When socialists talk about property, they're
Mm.
never talking about, oh, the house that you live at, the car that you drive, the pair of sneakers you really like. They're talking about usually property, like intellectual property, or the right to own employment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The right to
Hmm.
be an employer, the right to share, like, yeah, like a property of a company, that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
more about power than property. And they could pick better words. That's why they distinguish between private property and personal property. But
Yeah.
I forgot my tangent. It's okay.
No, you're just saying. I think you're really focusing on the fact that our system needs to kind of be rewritten in a way where
Not even
people.
necessarily rewritten, because, like we've been saying, things happen progressively. We just need
Mhm.
to aim in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, what's the aim? What direction are you thinking? More people driven economic policies.
Of course, because
What?
the economy is a people. It's a system designed to distribute income amongst people.
Yeah.
It's a system designed to get people to create efficient systems of distribution of resources. We need a way to get people to get off their couch. We need a way for people to do something that help make society work. Because, like, if everything was guaranteed in the year 1800, you can get whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have anything really. We have like wheat fields, but there's no innovation. There's not any, like, society is slowly moving towards a self-sustained system where, like, we are post scarcity. You know what I mean? And when we get to that place, we're not gonna be able to rely on, like, labor to produce an income. Like you've been talking about with AI. Like,
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I was going with AI.
innovation kills capitalism at the end of the day,
Well, it kills the amount of people needed in capitalism,
which is
and
what kills
yeah,
capitalism, because capitalism relies on the exploitation of the worker in order
hmm
for them to turn a profits. They
yeah,
can a big company can charge lower prices than their smaller competitors, and they can drive out their competition if they're not paying their employees very much.
yeah,
There's always trade-offs in business, and there's something that you have to sacrifice. And when the system is decided by the shareholders how it's going to run, they're never going to sacrifice their own shares when they're not going to get anything in return.
yeah. So now we're gonna have a system where there's shareholders, the 5% you're saying that owns it, dictating the 95% of the people in America who
Yeah.
has who needs work. And that's kind of what I was saying with the AI race. It's just we're already moving towards a society that kind of was driven a lot of workers out of the workforce. COVID was kind of the start of it, and now this Chat GPT is going to be, I think, the nail in the coffin in terms of
At least what ChatGPT is leading to, you know.
what Chat GPT leads to. Not right now. Currently, it's not that
I
smart.
don't think just like a voice system, or the system that's like,
No,
what,
the tech,
what's
no, the
the capital
technology,
of Thailand, ChatGPT? I don't think that's
no,
going
the
to
tech,
do capitalism,
no,
but
the technology is driven inside of it,
yeah,
not actual surface level stuff that people are using.
I agree.
The the ability that this computer now can think for itself, well, to some degree,
Yeah,
think for itself by using information that's already readily known. Now, what happens with that is essentially what it is a computer now can start catching its own mistakes. And what that does is that makes computers more efficient, less reliant on humans to catch those mistakes because the computer now can catch its own mistakes. So I think it just reduces the workforce. A lot of quality control jobs, a lot of manufacturing jobs um, will go away. You have a lot of just regular 9 to 5 jobs that normally didn't need uh, a college education will start going away because I mean, just in banking, why would you need a teller if you can do everything remotely? You
yeah.
know, and these just little basic stuff like that. And I think that that makes up most of the economy. If let me see here, Bureau of Labor Statistics percentage.
Anyways, while you're looking that up, I would
Yeah,
say it's pretty clear that the kind of menial tasks, I mean, we've moved away from these kind of jobs in the past. Like in the early 1900s, we had people, like, we didn't have machines the same way. People built every single part of a house, and now we have cranes that lift.
yeah,
We're reducing the need for certain more difficult jobs that we should move away from. And I do think that our society is going to move towards a system where, like, every single job is going to be an entertainment or something like that. Like, you're going to have to be an influencer. You're going to have the late stage capitalism is basically everybody's going to be an advertiser.
yeah. It's
Everybody's going
all,
to have some
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Marketing. You have to have marketing skills.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree with you because I think that that's where we're going. Because a lot of the jobs that were common to men, they come out with fake chicken. Like they found a way to replace chicken, and it's
Yeah.
like so they're not even growing chicken anymore. So the
Oh, they
farmers are
are. They're probably not in 30 years. They
well
still
they've
have
already
factory farming, but
they've already got fake chicken out now.
yeah.
So
Once it's cheaper for them to actually use the fake
maybe
chicken and not, like, factory farm a bunch of GMO pumped, like,
hmm
circular shaped chickens who have never seen outside of a cage, then we'll probably move past that factory farming, like, system. Like, the vegans and the environmentalists are not the ones that are gonna change the way that we exploit animals and torture them just for their meat, it's going to be capitalism. Once it's no longer profitable, and once people start buying other only like factory farmed or only like freelance eggs and stuff that you see in California, where nobody's buying the factory farm stuff anymore. I don't know. Once
Yeah.
we move away from the profitability of that, then we're only going to see artificial foods like that.
Yeah. Let me show you. All right, I wanted to pull this up. This is
Yeah, pull
something
up the statistics.
that Bureau of Labor Statistics. When we look at the next 10 years, you have utilities, which are, like your light, your water, those people who are hired by those, the light company, the water company, those jobs are going down. You're going to lose about 11,000 jobs in doing that. We have wholesale trade. What else is going down? You also have state local government jobs are going down.
Hmm.
Federal government jobs,
Take that, conservatives. Talk about the growing government.
yeah, the federal government jobs are going down.
Yeah,
The jobs that are going to increase significantly over the next 10 years are going to be jobs in, let's see, transportation, warehousing,
interesting. I
and
feel like automated cars, not automated cars, self-driving cars are kind of going to take that away, though, aren't they?
self-driving cars. Yes,
Yeah.
but apparently that technology is not going to do anything in the next 10
Maybe,
years.
yeah, maybe not the next 10 years. You're right.
Yeah. You have information technology that's going to go up, obviously, because AI.
Yeah.
Um,
The
the
people
bank,
that it takes to actually administer the AI systems and make sure mechanics. I don't know.
yeah, the banking
Engineers,
system is going to increase jobs.
banking system. Hmm.
Yeah, that was funny. Professional and business services are going to increase.
Which yeah, like that's kind of like marketing what we were saying, right?
Yep, healthcare assistants are going to increase.
It's fair.
Hospitality increase, and that's pretty much it. And other service jobs. So, literally, your job outlook over the next 10 years is going to be service jobs, health, teaching, and I will say financial activity, professional business services. They're all connected. So you're gonna have to be an office worker.
Yeah.
And
Well, and also I think what we mentioned was like that entertainment is obviously the new. Everybody wanted to be a movie star, but now everybody wants to be like a YouTuber.
an
So
influencer,
I think that's what we're going to move towards, and they're going to be a bunch of, they're just getting paid by advertising to other companies. But also, I think, like you were saying, a lot of the, we'll say, like low skill labor, like factory jobs that we're going to be able to automate away, is
yeah,
really going to take away education or take away opportunities for people without like college degrees. So
yep,
a lot of people are the poorest of the Americans are going to suffer the most. The companies in China that really do most of the factory work right now, they're going to be able to buy AI systems to do it for them, and those people are going to lose jobs. So we have to figure out ways to supplement that kind of income because
exactly,
right now, one way is obviously we need to guarantee educational opportunities so that we don't have people who just can't afford education or can't also afford to pay for education because they can't get a job. So there's just going to be people on the streets. Like I live near San Francisco. It's already an issue.
yeah,
People who've been in jail for a certain amount of time and can't get hired because they're like one felony or something like that, they're
yep,
immediately like, "Oh, you're out of the economic system, so have fun on the streets." Like these are the
exactly,
kind of people that are just make one bad decision and their entire lives are altered and they have no sort of opportunities at all. That isn't freedom about having opportunities. Aren't we
yeah,
a country that cares about second chances and about you
yeah,
know we could still get something productive out of people who've made one bad mistake in their life. People can change, people can grow. Like we need to be
yeah,
more empathetic in intelligent about how people actually operate, because the economy is supposed to serve the people. It's supposed to create incentives for people to work and a way for people to earn the life, the pursuit of happiness, the everything that they want to achieve. That is freedom.
Yeah.
Conservatives talk a lot about negative freedoms, the freedom from. We need to have freedom from government. We need freedom from uh, them taking away our free speech, from freedom from them taking away our guns. What about freedom? Freedom to freedom to do this. Freedom to have spent time. Freedom to spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Freedom to not get sick and die because you don't have access to healthcare. Like, their freedom is not just something that people can take away from you. It's something that you need to have access to, and
No,
something that needs, like, you need to be in a society to be a really free person.
no, I agree with you. I wanted to go touch base a little bit more about some of the statistics I was just looking
Sure.
through. Um, I was looking at, so they have this breakdown. So everything I was talking about, the utilities, the business side, and the service side, that is essentially professional jobs. When we look at the agriculture jobs in America, you're going to see that manufacturing is in a negative. So in 10 years, we're going to be losing manufacturing jobs, which we already have been, but picking up rapid. Construction is going to stay relatively safe. Mining work, which is kind of only for West Virginia, but it's uh, it's relatively stable. But
Until we actually replace fossil fuels with like alternative energy, which is inevitable.
it is. That's why it's going down. Been
Oh,
going down a
what you're
lot.
saying now? I thought you said it was relatively stable or something.
I did say that, but from 2011 to 2021, they lost 219,000. Looks like they went down to 200. They lost 220 jobs.
It probably hasn't changed much because we haven't really done much with
Yeah,
with getting away from fossil fuels as our main source of energy. But
exactly.
it will. It will definitely change.
Yeah, it's going down. It's so we're definitely being less and less relying on it.
Especially
When
in
we look at our
California.
yeah, when you look at our agriculture, self-employed, I think this will be the farmers. That's actually going down over the next. Well, they've been going down for 118, and then now they're
Part
going
of the
down
reason is we don't have like small farmers anymore. We just have like big
mass.
farming corporations like Monsanto's that just buy loads of property, and
Yep.
yeah, they'll
No,
just
you're right.
yeah.
It's and then when we look at agriculture in general, there's not many jobs that's going to be projected in agriculture and obviously farming, like you were saying, because of these big massive corporations. Because you, as you were saying that, the wages in agriculture are still relatively stable. So that tells me they're working. They're just not working on small farms.
Yeah.
So 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 as we see this and AI, I think all these numbers was probably before AI is taken account
Yeah,
for it.
for
Because a
sure.
lot of these industries are going to probably be not so much the agriculture or the farm and manufacturing, but a lot of these business profession jobs will be reduced significantly. Um, that's just my opinion. I think that we're just going in a world where it's like very little. Like I just use myself as an example. Like I don't use much things anymore because I have multitude of things that does one thing for me.
True.
You're
Your
like,
iPhone does most of what you need.
yeah, right. So I wake up with my phone, I can take calendar, date, everything else, and I can do a whole bunch of stuff with very little things that I have to go to. And so I just see the world doing that. We're condensing, and we're condensing. And it makes me worried because what happens when you have so much inequality? I think Barack Obama said this in an interview recently. When you have so much inequality, it always leads to uprisings. He
Yeah.
didn't say that exact thing. I'm saying the uprising thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but he was just saying that he's worried about the growing inequality. I I love history, so I study history. usually what happens in every society when there's a growing inequality, there's usually a riot or some kind of
Revolution.
revolution
Yeah.
to address that. And and that's what I fear because I don't think it's going to happen in 10 years from now. I think America's still strong, but as
Yeah.
nothing happens in a vacuum, everything happens slowly and we degrade slowly, you know, and that's just what happens. And so I think in the next 10, 20, 30 years, if we keep going just down the projection that we're going through, we're going to be a society that's more divided, more separated. Rich are this way, the poor are this way. We
Yeah.
see the world in two different ways. And and I think that both parties are contributing to it
Yeah.
because we're not talking about the things that we have in common, the common
Yeah,
problem.
because both parties, if they have one opposition party, their entire job is to alienate the other side essentially and to, demonize them. And all the problems in society are because of the other party, and it kind of makes it easier for you to look past the crimes of your own party essentially. And the biggest crime of the Democratic Party is like apathy, just sort of allowing bad stuff to happen instead of actually causing it. Which, if bad stuff happening, like, it doesn't matter as much as who is causing it if nobody's stopping it, you know. But the
Yeah,
real pitch to the independent, undecided voter, it does have to come from a genuine place in your heart. Like, we're both humans and we have the same material differences, the same material problems that we're facing. We're both trying to earn a higher income so that we can afford more stuff in a country where there's rising prices and there's more instability, and we don't know who's going to be president in a year and what direction our country is going to move in.
yeah,
At the end of the day, it doesn't come from a partisan place. It doesn't come from this party does everything great and this party does everything bad, because they've been using the same economic consensus for the last 70 years or whatever. Like,
yeah,
this, there's not 10, 20 years ago, there was almost no difference between the two parties.
yeah,
So we are moving in a place where it's becoming to be more stark differences between the Republicans and Democrats, and that makes the pitch a little easier for me.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, class divide is a much bigger problem than cultural divide. The
yes,
working class Trump voter and the working class Bernie voter are gonna agree a lot more than a Hillary voter and a Trump voter.
yep,
But at the same time, a Romney voter, a Romney Hillary voter, they're both gonna have a lot more in common than like a Romney voter and Bernie Sanders or something. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, they're it's it's like it's the culture is more economic than even partisan or even where you live in the country. It's the people, it's how you make money and what your vested interests are in the country. And culture is a distraction most of the time. And culture is embedded in people's like lives. And the longer they live their life, like the more embedded they are in their own culture. Like a culture conservative who's like 70 years old, he's not going to change that all of a sudden become super like liberal about a bunch of stuff. Like, that's not something that's going to change. But they
exactly.
are at risk of having their social security taken away or having their Medicare stripped. And that's the kind of thing that we can convince voters of. We can show the actual economic policies and the ways in which Republican politicians are lying to them. You have to see that Democrats are also lying to them. A lot of Democrats, because they
Yeah,
already know that they put all their attention on the ways the Democrats lie. So you can't try to pretend like your side does everything good, and their side is everything bad, because all their friends, all their culture, everything is embedded in their side. It's the, it's a slow process of changing somebody's minds, but you have to it is an economic focus. It's not a policy focused discussion, but it's an economic focus about
yeah,
what are the actual problems in society and how are we both screwed by the same system, and what are the root causes. That's when you have to talk about corruption. That's when you talk about how the donor class influences the economic policies, and how we can't really pass anything even if we wanted to because of the way our system is built. It's talking about the actual like instabilities of our system that can change somebody's minds. And I do it. I actually am. That's one of the things I feel like I'm best at is talking to more conservative minded people and
Mm-hmm.
convincing them that we agree on most issues based on how you frame the issues. You have to kind of talk to it more culturally conservative, like, it's all rigged and the deep state is, when you're talking about the deep state, you're obviously talking about the corporations and the high end social or the corporate donors and the shareholder class. Like, we're not talking about the same necessarily deep state because they think it's all just democratic elitists. So you don't have to talk about specifics, but when you convince them that you share the same core values, then when your minor disagreements come up, they're a lot more likely to have their mind changed. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with you, 100%.
Yeah. Like, we're both are former Republicans, so it's
Yes, I was a Republican 18, 19 years old.
yeah, me too. Well, actually, I was like a right wing libertarian at that time, but I was a Republican for a while, and I mean, even the 2018 election was the first time I voted, and I technically voted for Libertarians, Republicans, and like a Democrat or two.
Mm-hmm.
I voted for the Democrat just because I wanted to feel special, like I'm the super enlightened centrist that can vote across parties. I didn't know the names or what they really stood for, just to clarify, but
Yeah,
like, we know what it's like to have our minds changed over time.
yeah,
And
exactly. Well, I never voted for a Republican. I was a Republican,
yeah,
never voted for one, which was weird.
yeah,
You
sorry.
know,
But we
but
both
yeah,
know that being shamed out of your views is not how you change your mind.
no, I just grew up. I mean, I was a Republican because I was Christian, so a lot of it, was based on that. And then, yeah, so, but as I started diving deep into policies and I started to look at the way I was raised
Mm-hmm.
and how far I got because of the government, that's when I started changing my ideology.
Yeah.
Because if we keep the Republican viewpoint of conservatism, there's no real place for an African American like me, or not just African Americans, but Filipino, any immigrant, or any person who doesn't come from wealth
Yeah.
to make it in American society, because
Mm-hmm.
the idea is it's not progressive. The idea is to conserve what we already have. So
Yeah.
the foundation is not to build people; it's to keep the rich from being rich
Yeah.
and keeping the status quo. That's literally the foundations of the party. So for me, I understood that it was important to appreciate and understand what is it that where I came from and how I got to where I you know to where I'm at, and it was because of a lot of democratic social policies that
Yeah.
got me there. I now, do I think there's you know, I'm open to hearing any idea, but
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, progressive ideas like Lyndon B. Johnson, like affirmative action, like a lot of the things that helped get me to where I'm at, was because of social policies. So I can't. It was hard for me to raise in my head like, how can I be a Republican? But if I was a Republican, can I actually get where I was trying to get to?
Yeah.
And, no Republican really, no Republican can be serious and genuine, Tim Scott, and sit there and say that, that the Republican agenda helps push and progress people of diverse background,
Yeah.
being poor working families to minorities to immigrants from all over. And that was just, that's my 2 cents. That's why I switched. Uh,
It's interesting that it was like more policy focused issues that changed your mind, but you
yeah,
were studying to be like a lawyer and stuff. It makes sense. When my
yeah,
mind was changed, I was still in my formidable years, and it was actually seeing the hypocrisy of, I've always been sort of anti-authoritarian. I don't trust government and bureaucrats, which is kind of a value across most Americans. But seeing the Republicans campaign on that stuff and being on their side and seeing them win and drop all their values just to
yeah,
just to pad Trump's ego,